And Copperpot's Cove means that Nope and Get Out are in the same universe.
Okay, but are the ones he produces included too?
Well, no, but the car trip from the last season of Key and Peele is.
And so I said, don't send me the way to Bomba Bay Way. Right?
Guys, what are you doing?
Sorry, what?
I said, what are you doing?
Just what? 1 second. I can't hear you. I got to turn off the plane. 1 second.
Yeah, turn off the plane.
Okay, I said, what are you doing?
Oh, so you know how I'm always coming up with amazing ideas to make our podcast famous?
No, I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, I was thinking, what better way to celebrate this week's episode than to do the first ever podcast from an airplane?
Eli, first of all, we don't need silly gimmicks for people to love our show. Noah's got a really interesting piece of history this week that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, and I just Googled it, and there's 7 podcasts on planes.
7? Really? Damn.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's just a kiddie ride out front from the grocery store. So
yeah, why would you think that thing would fly?
Oh, yeah, we didn't, but Tom was stealing it anyway, so we figured, why not?
Tom, why?
I just, I don't like it when children are happy. So,
Yeah.
That's true. He does not like that.
No, that's fair.
especially mine.
Hello and welcome. Citation Needed. Podcast where you choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we are experts because this is the internet. That's how it works now. I'm your flight attendant tonight, but I'll need my passengers. First up, a guy who has his knees to his chin because planes are made for tiny folk, and the guy who's complaining that all the bottles of liquor are for tiny folk too, Heath and Tom.
Okay, I don't normally want to murder a child, but when I walk through first class to my coach seat, that's in my heart. I'm just saying. I don't do it. I want to.
Now, Cecil, to be fair, if those bottles were made for me-sized people, the plane would never be able to take off. So
that's fair. All right. Also joining us tonight, the man no one wanted to sit next to because conversation always devolves into what particular ointment he's applying to his rash this month, and the guy who drew the short straw, Eli and Noah.
Look, if I don't smile and shrug at whoever ends up next to me, they won't know that I know.
and joke's on you, I'm the only one whose straw fits in these tiny little seats. So.
If you'd like to get into our frequent flyer program, you can join our Patreon and gain access to our exclusive lounge where we sometimes read Harry Potter fan fiction. If you'd like to learn how to do that, just be sure to stick around at the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Noah, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about the Wright Brothers.
And Noah, you no doubt deviated from the show's formula by reading a whole fucking book about these guys, or
not a Bill Bryson book, by the way.
I didn't ask. So anyway, are you ready?
It was by National Book Award and 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning author David McCullough.
Literally does not matter at all.
Who also wrote the books I used for my episodes on the Brooklyn Bridge and the Panama Canal. Mm-hmm. So actually, you know what? It makes him the author whose books I have based the most of my citation needed essays on. Unless you count reading a fifth of a chapter in a book as reading a book about it like Heath does, in which case Bill Bryson also probably mentioned the Wright Brothers before at some point.
Noah. Look me in the eyes.
Yeah, man.
You got to let it go.
Not until I have a written apology and Heath does an essay on how wrong he was.
Okay. Is the safe space in the script done? We can all talk now. Just embrace it. You like Bill Bryson. I like him too. He's good stuff.
I like Bill Bryson too, but I read like full books for my thing. I don't read like a section of a chapter about it.
Okay, so who were the Wright Brothers?
A Short History of Nearly Everything is one of his books. That's the name of a whole one.
Fantastic book.
I could have read all
has
of
the
it.
Wright Brothers.
Jesus fucking Christ! Will you get on with it?
Yeah, take us home.
Are the guys who built the world's first working airplane. And I can say that because I'm not a tortured wiki full of naysayers and nitpickers. But according to Wikipedia, They're just, quote, generally credited with inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane, end quote. And we'll get to all of that later, but it's mostly either like Noah-level pedantry about what counts as flying.
Yeah, some Buzz Lightyear Wikipedia editor wannabe. No, that's just falling with style.
It is that, though. Or it's bitter historians from other countries who think that their guy should count, or it's just complete bullshit.
The Wikipedia comment section always feels like a raging mosh pit of Noah's, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Side note, Mosh Pit of Noah's is the name of my Rush cover band. We're playing next week. For why?
So specifically, the brothers in question were Wilbur and Orville Wright, born in 1867 and 1871, respectively. They also had a sister, Catherine, who will factor into the story a little bit. But they also, and I love this detail, have two other older brothers that don't at all. Like two brothers who got normal jobs and did normal shit while their two younger brothers dicked around in a bunch of sand dunes and bumbled their way into history. I feel like Thanksgiving must have been so awkward at their house after that.
Yeah. Like the Christ family at Easter. Mom's just like, oh my God, so cool. To save all of humanity, past and present and future. Wow. So, Alan, how's your thing looking at sheep this week, right?
It's Alan Christ. So these five were the sons of itinerant preacher Milton Wright and woman from before the 1950s and therefore occupationless Susan Catherine Kerner. Now, she's going to die when the brothers are still pretty young and before they do any historical shit, but I bring her up because there's this tendency to present the Wright brothers as two self-made nobodies from a nowhere part of the country that pulled themselves up by the bootstraps so hard they wound up airborne. And there is like some justification for presenting them as working Joes. Like, I mean, they didn't have like a family fortune to invest in their experiments or anything, but their mother was a direct descendant of the progenitor of the Vanderbilt family. So I feel like they didn't have to buy their bike shop on credit.
Oh man, I'm second cousins with the Rothschilds, and all I got is Judaism.
All right, but Eli, if you control the damn media, why do we only have 15 listeners to this show?
Right?
Thank you.
All I got is Judaism.
Talk to your boys.
Now, as near as I can tell, Wilbur was an absolute genius, and Orville was also there.
Well, ballast is important in engineering, Noah.
As it is in comedy, yeah. So both brothers, no doubt,
I'm slowing this down right now. I'm going to slow this whole thing right down. Okay, now go.
So thank you. Both brothers no doubt contributed to the final product, but it seems like every major breakthrough they made came from Wilbur. And once Wilbur dies, Orville doesn't go on to have another original thought at any point in his life, as near as the historical record can tell. So after he gets out of high school, Wilbur was going to go on to Yale, just like all the bootstrappers out there. But in the winter of 1885-86, he gets the absolute fuck beat out of him with a hockey stick. Now, the Wikipedia article just says that he got struck in the face with a hockey stick, but there's a lot of speculation that this was an intentional beating.
What?
Oh, Jesus.
And according to his dad, the guy who hit him went on to become a notorious mass murderer.
Wow. Okay. I mean, proud tradition at Yale with the mass murdering, right? You got like Ron DeSantis, Hillary Clinton, a lot of Yaleys just murdering the shit out of people all over the place.
So now the result of this beating, though, is some missing teeth and also like some severe PTSD type shit that left him basically hiding in his house for the next several years.
Okay, hold on. Back up a little bit. He got beaten to shit with a hockey stick by a serial killer. Was that like
yes,
a practice run? He's like, all right, well, hockey stick, isn't it? No. All right, maybe pickaxe. Next time we'll try pickaxe.
It's a crowbar.
Also, where's the Yale hockey team when DeSantis was there? How come we haven't heard anything about that?
Do you notice they're never in the same room?
So meanwhile, younger brother Orville has dropped out of high school to start a printing business out of his family's shed using a printing press that he and Wilbur designed and built. After a couple of years, the two of them gave up on that and opened a bicycle shop. Now, this was 1892, right when the bicycle craze was starting to really take off in the U.S., and within a few years, they were manufacturing their own line of bikes and doing a pretty solid business with it. So at this point, we need to back away from the brothers a bit and talk about the state of aviation in the mid-1890s. Because while there was no such thing as powered, heavier than air flight, the number of qualifiers I just put before the word flight is a solid reminder that Wilbur and Orville were stepping into an existing and long-standing effort. And while they would make a few important discoveries and inventions along the way, they did so building off of the success of previous aviators.
So it's like podcasting, standing on the shoulders of other guys with basement studios and no 401k. I get it. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, fuck that, Cecil. These kids and their Yetis, they're standing on our shoulders. In my day, you recorded for a year with your microphone pointed at your desk. That's it. And we liked it.
No, of course, as many black and white montages of public domain footage would be happy to remind you, much of what was going on in aviation back then was comically stupid. Much of it was also suicidally stupid, though, if I'm being completely honest, those two are not distinct categories in my mind. But there were people making important advancements. People like French-American engineer Octave Chanute, who is often hailed as the father of aviation for his efforts in supporting and publicizing the work of other aviation enthusiasts.
Okay, yeah, but most of those other aviation enthusiasts' work was prefaced with "Hold my beer," so not a lot to publish here.
So a lot of post-mortem publications in this field. Yeah. So also particularly noteworthy was German hang gliding pioneer and worldwide celebrity at this point, Otto Lilienthal, who was a hero of Wilbur and Orville until his glider flipped over mid-flight and he plunged to his death in the summer of 1896.
Okay, the first people to try flying are so goddamn impressive to me. I'm skeptical of airplanes now. I still don't think that people are like, oh, it's just lift and thrust and drag. Liar, Ponzi. Do you hear that? It's nonsense. And these people went for it in the 1800s and they just tried it. They were like, hold on, I bet I can find a loophole in gravity? In gravity. So impressive.
I feel like when 50% of your children die of milk leg, you're not nearly so precious about your own existence as we are today.
Good point. So it's important to note, though, that despite incremental advances in the science, the feeling among the general public, by and large, was that powered flight was impossible because God didn't intend for humans to fly. And so any attempt to build an airplane was doomed to fail. Of course, hot air balloons had been around since the late 1700s, and God didn't intend for humans to float either. I have no idea how they reconciled that.
Sure.
Anyway, the point is, though, that trying to build an airplane was shorthand for being a fucking nut back then. And not at all helping that reputation was the fact that the guy that the U.S. government was backing to crack this gravity code, it was a guy by the name of Samuel Langley. He made a habit of announcing every experimental flight beforehand, rustling up a whole big press contingent, and then crashing a brick of an airplane into the Potomac.
Samuel, I'm writing a news story on your aerial plane. I wanted to attribute the quote correctly. Would you say it was more of a kerplop or a splash? Which was it?
Now, to this point, a lot of aviation involved building and launching models and kites and shit, but more than that, it involved just looking at birds and going, how the fuck do they do that? Right? And it's exactly that kind of observation that led Wilbur Wright in the late 1890s to probably his biggest insight on the way to powered flight, the concept of wing warping. Now, if you've ever cut the ends of a paper airplane's wings and folded them to adjust the way it flies, you're basically familiar with the concept, right?
Okay, what if we had paid toys growing up? What should we imagine then?
Well, then you didn't get to bootstrap like the rest of us. Basically, it's a way to warp the wings mid-flight to adjust your flight path. And it's basically because that seems with the benefit of like a lifetime of watching airplanes fly. It was a new idea when Wilbur and Orville first tested it on a kite in 1899.
Okay, it's got to be insane for a baby bird on that first day, right?
Right.
Like, I feel like if I was a baby bird, I'd be like, nope, absolutely not. No. Are you serious? Oh, sorry. Just warp my arms? Do you fucking hear yourself? What are you talking about?
Yeah, Heath, and even harder, is the poor things are learning the whole thing on the fly. You don't have to be pushed out of the nest. It's just not really the right time to wing it,
Okay. So
just wait.
Let me go fast.
I will not be met by deafening silence.
Yeah, you
Do
will.
you and Heath have matching t-shirts that say that? You have to tell us. It's like being a cop.
Cecil's like, all your jokes this week, man. All your. I'm editing out all the laughs. So At this point,
That's
Wilbur
every
and
week.
Orville realized that they were on. They realized they were onto something, and they decided to take their experiment to the next level. But unlike Samuel Langley, they wanted to make sure that their early efforts happened far away from prying eyes of the media and any better funded aviator who might copy their ideas and fuck them out of their future Citation Needed episode. But in addition to privacy, this is what they were after. They also needed abundant wind and a lot of nice soft sand to crash land their early gliders in. They also needed to be close enough to their home in Dayton, Ohio for them to travel there on the cheap, since they were funding the whole endeavor with nothing but the profits from their bicycle shop.
Bouncy castle rental.
So that would help. Now, ultimately, they landed on a spot in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, a strip of islands along the Atlantic coast that were sparsely inhabited at the time and will be again another decade or so after climate change has its way. And in the summer of 1900, the two brothers set out for Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, to make history.
Well, now that you mentioned two of Tom's biggest fears, the inevitable human extinction and a cute kitten mixed with a hawk, we should take a break so he can compose himself. I don't know, Orville. I feel like we're just going to have to modify this.
The paper?
No, this is a blueprint. We have to modify what I'm pointing at.
No,
Here.
I know. I was kidding around. You're talking about the big part. Sits on the front, the thing next to the fucking spinny part.
The engine and the propeller. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's gonna be like,
Yeah,
It's gonna
Orville.
be-
What is it?
it's gonna be tough. Yeah, it's gonna be difficult.
Yes, it is going to be tough. We are going to have to
Make
make it lighter.
lighter. Yep. No, I was gonna say the same thing, but you heard me start coughing. I couldn't finish my sentence. But yeah,
Oh, were
lighter.
you?
Yep.
Were you going to say that?
Yep. Yeah. Totally new. We should make it lighter, obviously. Like way lighter, or the thingy, it just won't work.
What thingy, Orville? What thingy?
You know what I'm talking about, Wilbur. Don't be coy.
Do you mean the airplane?
Airplane. Yeah. Of course. Airplane. Obviously.
Got any great ideas on making that engine lighter?
Yeah. Okay. Well, right now it's made of the wood.
It's
So
metal. It's metal. It's made of metal.
Well, there's your problem right there. Have you considered wood?
Okay. Look, Orville, I think it's time for you to do the most important engineering thing.
You need me to
We
go
have-
to the bakery and get us donuts.
That's the time. It is the time. Right
Okay,
now for that.
Wilbur. But here's the thing. I feel like this project, it's leaning on my personal expertise like a lot. And you're not really doing anything.
We are, but it's really important. Okay. And can you get a couple bear claws this time?
Don't worry your pretty little head, Wilbur. I got it, Bear Claws.
Maybe you could send her to the tree.
Oro, shut the fuck up.
Well, before the break, the Wright brothers just got into North Carolina, and boy, were their legs tired. So what happened next? No.
Yeah, that joke didn't really take off until after this story. Yeah. So to be clear, I ended the first half a bit deceptively because we're actually still a couple years away from them like making any real history. See, despite his spectacular demise, the brothers were convinced that Otto Lilienthal had the right idea when it came to powered flight. That is, first you have to learn to control a flying vehicle, then you get to put an engine on it. They thought that some existing airplane designs had probably all it took to fly, they just couldn't sustain flight because their pilots didn't know how to control them. Like, think of a bicycle as a perfect analogy, right? Like, it doesn't matter how well the bike is made, you still have to learn to ride the damn thing. So instead of jumping straight to powered flight, they headed down to Kitty Hawk to experiment with a glider using Wilbur's wing warping method.
All right, buddy. No engine yet. gonna drop you from this tower on 3. You just focus on the steering. Figure out the engine later. Like, I know it's gonna end up working, but that's insane that they did this and it worked.
Yeah, but you missed the part where
So
Orville
good.
Wilbur's dad like ran behind the glider holding onto the seat, like don't let go, Dad.
No, it's so cool when they trick you and they do let go. You don't know for a while. You remember that moment?
I do.
Magical.
I remember doing that recently as the
My
dad.
dad didn't help me learn to ride a bike. Now,
Me too.
I need to emphasize here just how middle and nowhere the Outer Banks were at this time. So there are no bridges that go to Kitty Hawk at this point. Wilbur went out ahead of Orville, and he had to convince some schmo with a leaky-ass boat to ferry him there. He would later say that the first boat ride to the island was the most dangerous aspect of inventing the airplane. And it's not like he got there, like once he got there, you could just hope, check into the Motel 6 and run on down to the Applebee's. Throughout the multiple summers of their experiments in the Outer Banks, they had to live out of a tent and cook their food over a fucking camp stove.
I mean, it sounds like a Carolina to me, Noah.
Yeah.
Just turns to his brother. This is fun, right? Just living off the land, eating beans, trying to crash soft enough not to kill us, right?
Yeah. So building on the work of Lilienthal and Chanute, they designed this biplane glider that looked like a giant box kite, kind of. It was designed so that the pilot had to lay on his belly the whole time and fly it Superman style, but in reality, most of their flights that year were unpiloted. Instead, they loaded the glider up with sandbags or chains that approximated the weight of a person, and they would control it from ropes that they held from the ground. They did, though, make a few manned flights each, and they sent up some local kid on one of them as well. And while the results were promising, they weren't getting enough lift to really test out the wing warping concept.
Okay, that kid got fucked by the history books. Never heard of him until now.
God damn it, kids on airplanes ruining the flight from day one.
Now, they came back to Kitty Hawk the following year with a few adjustments, including much longer wings this time, but they still couldn't generate sufficient lift. So when they got home, they built a fucking bicycle-powered wind tunnel in their shop and recalculated basically every significant equation in aviation to that point. After testing and measuring over 200 different wing types, they figured they had enough information, and by 1902, they were convinced they actually knew the correct wing dimensions. So they headed back to Kitty Hawk to find out for sure.
Hey, kid, you're still here. That tracks. So, sorry about, your body getting mangled by
Oh, Jesus.
Here's the thing, though. We did some math with a bike tube. Do you want another nickel?
So in 1902, after radically changing their wing design and making some important changes to the rudder, they finally had a glider that had lift, control, and stability. And that was, at least in their minds, the minimum amount you had to achieve before you could start slapping an engine into the motherfucker.
I'm starting to be grateful for all the times they've kept me on the runway for maintenance. I wasn't mad at the time, but...
Yeah, Noah, at what point do they invent throwing your baggage like they're Scotsmen practicing for the Highland Games?
I'm doing this in my own time, Tom. We'll get there. Now, one of the weirdest aspects of this whole story to me is that they kept doing this shit for like 6 to 8 weeks, and then they would go back to making bicycles for 10 months a year. So for damn near a year, they were back in Dayton, fucking Ohio, knowing that they'd basically figured out how to fly and just waiting for the following summer so they could go back and make sure. They needed to build an engine that would be light enough to work on their glider. So, or to be more precise, actually, they needed to talk their shop mechanic, Charlie Taylor, into building one. You want to talk about a dude who gets fucked out of the history here. And I don't know enough about engines to describe all the innovations he made along the way, but suffice to say, this was far from the simple matter of slapping some existing motor onto the glider. He had to redesign the internal combustion engine from the ground up. Now, another big challenge was figuring out propellers. After all, it wasn't enough for the engine to power a set of wheels, right? It had to pull the vehicle through the air. And it's easy to assume that propellers on planes work the same as propellers on boats, but it's not remotely the case. And again, I don't have the time / am not smart enough to explain why, but it required yet another series of innovations and tests.
Okay, we put little tubs of water under the propellers, and we mangled the kid again. All right. That was dumb. That didn't. I don't even understand what I meant when I said that.
That's not gonna work. Now, the vehicle they wound up with would be dubbed the Wright Flyer, It had a wingspan of 12.3 meters or 40.3 feet, and it weighed 274 kilos or 605 pounds. Of that, 82 kilos, that's 180 pounds of it, was the engine, which provided a whopping 12 horsepower.
Oh my God.
Now, the whole thing cost him about
I feel like it's easier to just literally put 12 horses up there in the sky.
Really, honestly. Now, the whole thing cost him about $1,000, which would be like 35 grand in today's money. It's also 1/50th as much as the U.S. government gave Samuel Langley to launch test pilots into the river. In late 1903, they returned to Kitty Hawk after weeks of delays caused by a broken propeller and multiple trips back to Dayton. They finally had everything ready to go. So they flipped a coin to see who got to make the first flight. Wilbur won, and he made a flight that lasted about 3 seconds before the engine stalled and the whole thing crashed, causing extensive damage.
I am defying the God of the universe. Fuck. Ow. All right. I should not have said that. I shouldn't have said that.
I should have seen that coming. Now, a few days and a bunch of repairs later, on December 17th of 1903, they tried again. And because Wilbur had tried the last time, Orville got first crack at it this time.
I feel like there was a lot more after Ewing for this one, right?
Yeah, probably. Now, though it was only 12 seconds and 120 feet long, Orville, on that day, made the first powered flight in human history. And to make sure it was no fluke, they made 3 more flights that day, one of about 175 feet, one of about 200 feet, and one that lasted 852 feet, and then crashed and caused more extensive damage.
I like if the first flight was less than the length of a 747, right? It already did it.
And by the way, if you're surprised that they keep crashing without getting injured, I should probably point out that these flights were conducted at the soaring altitude of about 3 meters or 10 feet.
Guys, I cannot see our house from up here at all. Like at all.
Now, possibly the most incredible thing about this story is what happened after this first powered flight. Specifically, nothing. What? After millennia of dreaming about flight and centuries of efforts to decode the secrets of aviation, here a couple of dudes had finally made it happen in front of witnesses with a camera. They had photographs of this first flight. They had piles of notes and calculations and the backing of virtually every major name in the field of aviation at the time, anywhere in the world. And nobody fucking cared. The public had so thoroughly rejected the idea that powered flight was even possible that not even the newspapers in Dayton, Ohio could be bothered to cover the story. Yeah, the only news report published anywhere that year was some fantastical exaggeration from a reporter that clearly had zero firsthand knowledge of the situation in North Carolina.
I know this is a callback, but this was also happening literally the same year that seeing a car made the newspapers. So
Yes!
do with that what you will.
Right. So
What
basically,
are they covering? What were these people like? Fuck it.
the
Flying.
milk
Car in
leg
the sky.
outbreak,
You
clearly.
can't be fucked with that. It's a car in the sky. That's okay.
So basically, a whole year goes by with them saying, no, but for realsies, look at the pictures. But they couldn't exactly demonstrate the thing because they destroyed the Wright Flyer when it crashed. So they set to work building the Wright Flyer 2 while still running a bicycle shop and making bikes to pay the bills.
I bet that was an awkward year.
Oh, fuck. My bike chain snapped.
That's fine. We'll just take it down the street to the shop.
You know what? It's fine. We'll just walk.
Don't be insane. What? Why don't we just take it to the shop? They'll fix it.
I just don't like going there.
Why? Why don't you like going there?
Because whenever you go in there, they just tell you all about...
The time they defied God and man and flew like a bird.
Oh, exactly. They're fucking nutbags.
Yeah, well, they're the only nutbags in town who can fix your bike, so deal with it.
Fine. But I swear, if he starts talking about that kid they mangled...
So now this new plane was ready to fly by May of 1904, and this time, instead of heading all the hell way to North Carolina, they decided to test it out in a cow pasture near Dayton. They even invited a bunch of reporters to watch on the condition that none of them would take pictures. But the weather wasn't favorable that day, but for a couple of short hops, they didn't get their new plane off the ground. And based on that single failure, the local press basically ignored everything they said and did for the next year and a half, even when they were flying figure eights for minutes at a time and everyone in town was going out to see it.
Okay, but why would you stop covering that? Like, if I'm a reporter and even if I'm convinced that these two guys are going to keep trying to fly and failing,
yes,
that's a good thing. I'm definitely going to keep showing up to film these. They're in a cow pad. They're going to eat shit. In my head, I'm covering that.
Yeah, I mean, did Orville and Wilbur try yelling, "Ma, look at me, Ma, look what I can do"? And get a little attention?
Clearly not.
Look what I can do.
But it wasn't just the local press that was ignoring them. They informed the U.S. government that they'd built, one of the most important devices in military history. And basically the only response they got for years was, yeah, we gave a bunch of money to that Langley asshole and we're still not over it. Fuck off. In fact, in order to sell the damn thing, they had to travel all the hell way to Europe, where they spent months flying around in Germany, France, and the UK and wowing crowds everywhere, while all the governments were like, meh. It would be 1907 before they ever managed to sit down face to face with any government official willing to take them seriously.
Look, Wilbur, we tried dropping bombs from 10 feet up, but it didn't work out well, so we're going to just pass. We're not...
Now, of course, the instant France agreed to buy a few planes from them, every major military in the world was like, I want however many that guy bought plus one, right? And the history of modern aviation got going from there. Wilbur would spend the rest of his life fighting about what did and didn't violate their patent, and Orville would spend much of his considerably longer life trying to convince people that he was not just Wilbur's sidekick. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are still some people who would award the title of first powered flight to other aviators.
Fuck you.
Yeah, right? So now some of this is just based on bad history, but there are a few arguments that say that the flight in 1903 didn't count because, for example, they had to use a launching mechanism to catapult the plane to a starting speed.
So?
Right, exactly. Well, the other ones are even worse. They're like, well, you used skids instead of wheels, so it doesn't count.
Who cares? What is happening?
Right. Yeah, and the other one is that they could only take off in a strong headwind, so that's not really flying.
Nonsense.
Now, I'm not sure how valid any of these points are. They sound dumb to me, but I don't think any reasonable observer denies that their contribution to the invention of the airplane was as great or greater than anyone else's.
Who are these people? Who the fuck was trying to cancel human flight on a technicality? There's fucking pine tar on the propeller above the line that doesn't count. Fuck you.
No, it's like a fucking Australian who wants to go like, no, Australia actually beat you guys, or a German or whatever that wants to pretend, it's a national pride
I
thing.
bet
it's
it's the two older brothers.
So now there was, however, one purely vindictive effort that we know about to deny them of their title. And I have to mention this before we wrap up, because the people that backed Samuel Langley were super duper petty about this shit. Keep in mind that Langley was the secretary of the Smithsonian at the time, so the whole institution's credibility was tied up in his experiments to a certain degree. So in 1914, they let Langley's test pilot, a guy named Glenn Curtis, try to get Langley's last design to fly. Langley was dead by then. And he did. He got it to fly, but he only did so by copying off the Wright Brothers' homework. But despite that, and the fact that this test was only successful more than a decade after the Wright brothers' first flight, the Smithsonian put Langley's plane on display and called it the first plane capable of heavier than air powered flight. It would take them almost 30 years to calm the fuck down and admit the Wright brothers' proper place in history.
And if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Never read books about the early history of aviation on a cross-country flight.
Okay, are you ready for the quiz?
Let me check with the tower. Yep, we are cleared to go.
All right, Noah. What was the brothers' favorite tune to jam out to while they worked? A, I Believe I Can Fly.
Obviously.
B, Up Where We Don't Belong.
That's pretty
Or
good.
C,
Love that song.
Pretty Fly for a Right Guy.
That's excellent.
No, that's really fucking good. All three of those. B was really good too. But I'm gonna have to lean towards C, Pretty Fly for our Right Guy.
That is correct.
All right, Noah, building the airplane was an important step, but only the first step. What other major innovations needed to be developed to make air travel viable? A, need to make those little clear 4-ounce cups shaped so most of the liquid weight is high up in order to maximize the chances of spilling soda into your lap ball in the event of anything at all.
I hate them so much.
B, charging everybody on the plane an entirely different amount based on the random number generator pricing system. Or C, the invention of anti-ergonomics, invented in order to build seats that refuse to even acknowledge any of the shapes or positions humans can comfortably rest in.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go secret answer D, all of the above.
God, always every. All right, fine. Got it.
How deep should the cup holders be? Like a centimeter? I feel like
Too far.
That seems,
too much.
a little excessive.
Too much.
Yes.
Cast the
let's
shadow
scale that
of
back
a cup's
down.
bottom on top of the thing, and that's enough.
We could do a micron. It's ridiculous.
Can we hold the tray tables up with a loosened latch like they're in some kind of medieval prison?
Okay, so just set your cup in this shadow. That's a shadow will hold it. That's what will hold it steady is a shadow.
Mhm.
All right,
Yeah,
Noah.
like what does depth cost more? I don't feel. I
It
feel like
doesn't
it's
even
a
make
mold.
sense. Thank
Like
you.
it's a mold.
It's empty space. Just use it.
That pocket
God
on the
damn it.
back of the seat, can we somehow make that impossibly deep, but also there's no space in it whatsoever? Because we've given you 7 old magazines and a picture of a toddler dying in a plane crash.
Also, let's have a terrifying demonstration of capitalism when they're like, and they close first class on everybody. I think people will enjoy that too.
Or they make you order a sandwich with your phone.
All right, Noah, got one more for you. Which of the following is a true story about the Wright brothers' legacy? A, Ohio and North Carolina spent over a century in a fucking blood feud about who gets credit for the Wright brothers.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up.
B, North Carolina made their license plate motto first in flight in 1982, and Ohio spent the next 15 years seething with rage. And then they finally made their own plates that said birthplace of aviation as like a rival. C, Ohio was still mad at that point, so they somehow got U.S. Congress to make a resolution in 2003 that said, yes, technically, Ohio is the birthplace of aviation, like it says on their license plate. It is resolved. D, in 2013, Connecticut got into it.
Yes.
Connecticut's General Assembly made a resolution trying to steal this whole thing and claim some other guy, Gustav Whitehead, actually made the first flight in 1901. E, Ohio and North Carolina were like, oh my fucking God, we'll kill you, Connecticut. And Ohio made a clapback resolution that said, whereas fuck Connecticut because they're liars, fuck Connecticut, almost exact words, paraphrase, very close to that. Or F, Connecticut is almost certainly lying. This is
Almost?
very important. Pretty much all the experts agree that Whitehead never made any kind of serious flight. The best evidence for him is an extremely bad photo from 1901 that looks like the Loch Ness pterodactyl. It's nonsense. And that photo was in Germany. So Connecticut has nothing. Yeah, Connecticut.
Oh, this is tough because I have to get this one wrong to fit into the format. I'm gonna say, I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm gonna say it's F. The Gustav was almost certainly lying because he was definitely lying.
He was definitely lying, and also it was G, all of the above. Yeah.
Oh, God
But
damn.
also kind of like, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that guy was lying.
Heath wins.
All right. Let's get Eli going next week.
Bad idea. All
Ooh.
right. Well, for Keith, Eli, Tom, and Noah, I'm Cecil. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week. And by then, Eli, I have to write this down this way. Eli will be an expert on something else. That's not true, but I have to say it that way. Between now and then, you can check our Patreon page for our latest patron-only episode, My Immortal Part 2, which is somehow worse than Part 1. And if you'd like to leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can, please do that. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes. Be sure to check out citationpod.com.
And so with what we saw this afternoon, looks like all we need now is to
No, go on. Wilbur, what do we need now? What exactly do we need now?
No, I thought you would finish. Well, no, okay. Now I know too. We need more wing nest. Mom said you have to put my name on it.
I know she did, man. I know she did.
You have to. Let me see you do it.